I've been just spending just tons of money on Blu-rays. I got stuff coming. I got stuff that just arrived. I go crazy when I have extra money.
I hear that. I never have extra money. I just spend everything I have on movies and comic books, and then just let the regret just.
Sometimes
afterwards.
you just sit there in bed and you start looking at it and you're like, I could have spent this on something that really matters.
You know what's crazy is I always think of that later when there's something I need. Like for example, recently, my SD card for my camera got filled up, and it lasted about a year. It was like 128 gigabytes, and I need to buy a new one. And it's like maybe I shouldn't have bought all of those movies like a week ago, and I could have spent the $20 to $30 to buy a new one. But hey, live and let live, I guess.
But yes, we are here back on the Cinema Discovery Project. I think this is we're into the 40s now. Another episode.
Yeah, I think this is 41.
Yeah. We're getting close to that big 50.
I know. I consider 40 a big number. I guess it's an underrated.
It's an underrated big number. Yeah.
Yes, but I am Andrew Cabral, and you are Stephen Billings, the co-hosts of the Cinema Discovery Project, or Cinema Discovery Project, depending on if you want to call it the or not the. It really all depends on where you're searching online.
Sometimes you like movies with a the in front of them. I mean,
yeah, it's like the whatever.
The Fly.
Can't even think of it. Oh, The Fly, or for example, Joker, which we talked about last week, is not called the Joker movie. It's just called Joker.
Yeah.
Which I realized a lot when we were going over that. I constantly had to remind myself not to say the in front of Joker.
Do you think with the new Batman movie, it's going to be called The Batman?
I'm guessing. I think that's what the unofficial title is right now. It's just called The Batman. But my guess is they're going to change that eventually. This has to be just like a working title. They haven't even started shooting that thing yet, so who knows what it's going to look like. But before we get into our main topic of the week, which is taking a kind of a more focused look on Arthouse horror movies, we're doing this, just in time for Halloween.
I'll try to get this out on Halloween.
Yeah, it is October 29th, so Halloween is in 2 days. And it's a very special time for many people, both children and adults. If you are on social media, you'll notice those two things where Halloween's not just for a certain age demographic anymore. It's for kind of everybody.
I think it's always kind of been like that. I
guess maybe I've just gotten older and just didn't notice it.
When I was younger, as the adults are becoming more like children. They continue to go out and they party and wear costumes and. Everybody tries to hold on to their youth for as long as they possibly can. Just can't let it go. Every once in a while, I think about the idea of maybe this Halloween I'll go out and do something. We almost decided to go to a big party for this, but we just no. We're just like, nah, we got too much going on. I got a wedding we're planning and all that stuff, and it's too much going on. So we like staying at home.
Well, home is where I like to stay, and because that's where all my movies are.
Yeah, I'm very protective of my movies.
I'm very protective of them. But in the movie world, I guess segueing, there was one major death this past week. And like we mentioned last time, we don't like to talk about the deaths too much anymore.
Okay.
But I think this one's also important.
Yeah, we try to keep, everybody's important. But sometimes when there's a major player that goes out, we like to bring it up and pay tribute.
Correct. And this is one Robert Evans, who passed away on October 26, 2019. And you may be wondering, who is Robert Evans? Well, Robert Evans was a big-time producer back in the day, back pretty much predominantly in the 1970s, where most of his most well-known work is. And the reason why is because at the time he was the head of Paramount Pictures. I think we're going to go over kind of that portion of movie history, especially in American movie history, at some point in the future. But basically, back at that point in the 70s, you have New Hollywood, Scorsese, Spielberg, Coppola, Lucas, all those people. And he was part of that generation. If you're interested more about him specifically and that era, there are two documentaries out there that I think are well worth your time. One is A Decade Under the Influence, and the other one is based off of the book of the same name, I believe called Easy Riders, Raging Bulls, and they're both very good documentaries, and they both go over that time pretty significantly. But if you're interested in what specifically Robert Evans had his hand in. He was the producer on The Godfather, Chinatown, Godfather Part 2, Marathon Man, things of that movie. Those are the big time movies. And he also had his hands in other films later on, things like Urban Cowboy, Popeye, which is kind of Robert Altman's only mainstream movie, but things kind of like he didn't have much to do after that, but he was a big time player back in the day. Those are some significant movies early on in his career. There's also another documentary, I think it's called The Kid Stays in the Picture or something like that, where it's a documentary specifically about Robert Evans. And I think it's also based on a book of the same name. And it's something I think a lot of like cinephiles kind of go for. Yeah, it's called The Kid Stays in the Picture. It's an autobiography by film producer Robert Evans, a film adaptation of the book that was released in 2002. So that's what that is. But yeah, he's kind of someone who was significant in getting those movies off the ground, so we thought we would at least mention him. He's also like been around a lot. Like he always shows up to big time Hollywood parties and big things and reunions and all kind of stuff. So people have like seen him at events and stuff. So that's also kind of significant as well. I don't know if there's anything else Steven wanted to mention that happened big time this week in the world of movies. I mean, a lot of things.
A lot of things are happening. I mean, we're not a news show. We're not necessarily a news show.
We're not a news show, but things are.
Yeah, there's a lot of things going on. People dropping out of Star Wars. People,
Yeah, I mean, people dropping out of Star Wars. That whole Scorsese Marvel thing has
continued to go on
a life of its own.
Yeah.
I mean, just briefly covering that. Basically, he has like commented on it again, like another 2 times. And the most recent thing I heard is he kind of says they're a new version of a new form of art.
They're a different form of cinema.
Yeah, they're a different form of cinema. They're a new art form of cinema. And his main concern, and pretty much I think what we've assumed from the beginning, is that he's concerned about the cinemas themselves only expositioning these films and just ignoring the other films.
Sure.
The smaller films. I think that's kind of what his main point is. We recently, Coppola decided to put his name in his thing in the hat, where he called the movies despicable. But then today he came out and said that those were that's not quite what he meant. He's just not a big fan of franchises or about making. He thinks they're a form of making the same movie over and over again, which is kind of something we talked about in our last episode as well. That's kind of the problem with big franchises is a lot of these movies tend to look the same after a while. He commented on that. Ken Loach, who I guess people give a damn about what Ken Loach has to say, he came out doesn't really like the big tentpole movies either. Kind of makes sense. He's kind of that part of that same generation of Coppola and Scorsese, even older, I think. So that's kind of like a little update on that. But if Steven doesn't have anything else after that to say, I guess we can get into our main delicious topic for this time of year.
Delicious apple.
Delicious, appetizing.
Appetizing pumpkin-filled apple. Wait, can you put pumpkins in apples? Oh, wow, that's weird.
I don't know. Apparently you can put pumpkins in anything this time of year because that is literally what people do.
That's what everybody does. I made some pumpkin seeds. I made some roasted pumpkin seeds with cinnamon. Delish.
Oh, I haven't heard about that in 30 years. I think I did that once when I was in kindergarten.
Oh, well, thanks, man. Thanks for making me feel like I was a kid for doing that.
To be honest, I haven't carved a pumpkin since I was a little kid.
I also did that too. Yeah, thanks, man.
I don't do any ritual traditional things. I'm just so.
You're just an old man. You're just an old grumpy man. I guess I'm just
boring. The thing is, I've always been like that. Even since when I was a kid, I was actually just telling my dad earlier today that even when I was a kid, I really didn't even want to go out trick-or-treating. I just did it because everybody else was doing it.
Yeah.
I don't know what that says about me. I guess that just says I was an introvert my entire life.
But it sounds like it, yeah.
It sounds about right.
You just wanted to be in your basement watching movies.
I guess so. I guess back then I just didn't. Well, I never liked candy. I liked chocolate, but I never liked candy. So all the goods weren't good for me at the time. I wasn't looking to hoard up on candy for one night a year. But so keeping in the horror Halloween theme, I guess this is our spooky episode of the year. We're gonna be talking Arthouse horror, And people don't seem to realize that horror is a lot more nuanced than people tend to give it credit for.
Sure.
And there's a lot of just things that people aren't aware that there's an extensive amount of subgenres. And art house horror isn't particularly one of them specifically, but I think it's one of them that we believe exists. You know what I mean? Like, it's a thing to us. If you're like looking up on Wikipedia or something like that, you're really not maybe going to find art house horror. But you'll find art house horror films within a bunch of other subgenres. Yeah. But let's just talk about art house horror. Art house horror has been around for a very long time, and we covered some of it when we did our horror genre overview episode a year ago, essentially. And we kind of just went, like decade by decade, like horror phase to horror phase, just going over a bunch of different things. And it really has its origins back in the silent era. Yeah. When it comes to films like Nosferatu and Cabinet of Dr. Caligari and the Dr. Mabuse films, things like that, and even like
we talked about it before, Faust.
Faust is another one. Yeah, it has its origins way back then, and it also, I think, extends into German Expressionism and things like that was happening in the 20s and into the 30s. Things like, and you have people like F.W. Murnau, you have people like Fritz Lang, who was doing like I think M is an art house horror film.
Definitely can be. I mean, it's it's a guy that's a child murderer. I mean, it's not in your face, but it's definitely got scary elements to it.
Oh, of course. I think when you're thinking of anything like that, it's really that's a horror. Anything can be horrific if it scares you.
Sure.
You know what I mean? You know what I mean? But extending from that, and I think kind of what we really want to concentrate on is more modern stuff. Before we even get into more modern stuff, there's like lots and lots of art house horror films that have been around throughout the decades. And a lot of them have been within the foreign film genre. Yeah. Which is something that a lot of people don't know about. And there's a lot of fans out there who kind of dismiss foreign films saying, oh, I don't want to read subtitles, or, oh, I don't care about different languages, or, whatever. They're very narrow-minded.
What's funny about that is
some of the best ones.
Well, some of the best ones are foreign films, and the fact that America's, they know that because they keep remaking all of them.
They do actually keep remaking them. I mean, just the other night I watched the remake of Suspiria, which is a remake of a film from 1977 by Dario Argento, who was an Italian filmmaker. And a lot of those giallo films from the 60s and 70s by Mario Bava, Lucio Fulci, and Dario Argento are art house horror films, for lack of a better description for them. Some of them are in English, some of them are not in English, some of them are black and white, some of them aren't even particularly scary. A lot of them are just dealing with kind of like murder mysteries and stuff like that, but I would consider them art house horror because they're not what I think traditional horror films are.
They're not illicitly trying to scare you. They're not in your face trying to scare you. They're more depending on using certain images and certain maybe sound effects and things. They're using very subtle things to try to scare you instead of they're
using more like aesthetics and atmosphere and things like that. And those kind of traits I think carry over to a lot of the modern art house horror films. But I think, let me mention a couple of older art house horror films that I think a lot of people probably know about, but haven't even gotten their hands onto yet, or even think are art house horror films. And I think right away, something like David Lynch's Eraserhead, which is like I think his first film. Yeah. And I want to mention David Lynch because he just got his honorary Oscar at the Governor's Awards. I think last night or the night before last. Anywho, you can look that up and you can see the video of his acceptance speech. It's basically anybody who's ever been in a David Lynch film was there, like Kyle MacLachlan and Laura Dern and Isabella Rossellini was there. There's what was I saying? Okay, some other films here like The Wicker Man from 1973. If you've never seen The Wicker Man, do not watch the Nicolas Cage remake Garbage Fest.
Unless you want to laugh.
Unless you want to. Unless you want to laugh. Because the original Wicker Man is like this like psychological, sexual, weird cult movie with the late great what's his name is in it? Christopher Lee is in it. Britt Eklund is in it. It's a weird movie. I'll tell you that. It's
got a very big influence on one modern one. We'll probably talk about a little later.
Yeah, probably will. I really wish these movies were in chronological order because it's just me kind of going through them, trying to find the older ones. Quieten is another film that's part of the Criterion Collection. I know it's a film that both Steven and I really like.
Yeah, it's a great. It's kind of like in a it's a different story.
Anthological?
Yeah, it's 4 different stories. They don't really connect, but they're 4 different kind of like short stories.
Yeah, they're like ghost stories, like 4 different ghost stories, and it's directed by Masaki Kobayashi, and he is a great film director. He's someone I don't think a lot of people know who he is. He kind of gets lost when it comes to like Kurosawa and Ozu.
He did
and all those guys. He directed Harakiri.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites. Yeah.
I mean, Samurai Rebellion. He did also like The Human Condition. He did some not upper movies.
They're not uppers.
Those movies
no,
are not
they're
uppers.
definitely not uppers.
The movies are not uppers. There are other movies like Jigoku, which has an insane like hell sequence in the movie where it's just absolutely bonkers. That movie came out in 1960, and it's a Japanese film by Nobuo Nakagawa. And man, that movie's kind of crazy. I want to see and there's another one called Onibaba.
Yeah.
It's actually one that William Friedkin recommended a while ago. I think it was when he was, I don't know if it was when he was in the Criterion Closet or when he was just doing an interview. He was talking about Onibaba, and he was like, yeah, this movie is just like one of the scariest movies I've ever seen, and just like this person like can't get this mask off their face, and it's a really, really good film. It's from 1964, directed by Kaneto Shindo. And Kaneto Shindo, if I remember correctly, he did like The Naked Island and other films that are on the Criterion Collection as well. I think he did a Zatoichi film too, if I remember correctly. But there is a lot of films from back then, like The Eyes Without a Face is a French film that is incredible art house film, foreign film, and it's really, really creepy. The Hour of the Wolf is Ingmar Bergman, and for me, I think Ingmar Bergman has done more than just one horror movie, but I think this is his most like traditionally considered a horror movie. Is Hour of the Wolf. It of course stars Max von Sydow, Liv Ullmann is in it, so his usual players are in it, and it's a horror movie traditionally, but I think some of his other movies are also horror movies to me. Like something like The Virgin Spring, I think is a horror movie. I mean, it was literally remade later on as The Last House on the Left, Wes Craven's like first movie. It's literally the same plot. Granted, Wes Craven's movie is way more explicit and is more like snuff film-esque than The Virgin Spring, but I consider that a horror movie. And you have other films here like In the Realm of the Senses, Nagisa Oshima. Then there's November, which is another. November is a Rainer Barnett film. And then you get into most of these stuff I've been saying is like 70s, 60s era. And then you get into kind of the 80s had their own stuff. 80s is a weird decade in general for horror, because 80s is when like the slasher films kind of reigned supreme. And there wasn't a lot of kind of like art house stuff in there, but apparently there was. You have movies like Possession from 1981. You have, I would even say Blue Velvet to me is an art house horror film. That's another David Lynch film. Let's see some of the other ones here. Steven, are there any ones that you can think of?
Not from the 80s. Like you said, the 80s, there's just not a big crop of them. None that I've seen, at least.
No, and it's... like I've been doing my like 31 days of like horror, 31 days of watching horror movies every single day, and a lot of the stuff from the 80s has been all slashers. Like I was watching like Slumber Party Massacre and like Sleepaway Camp Massacre and stuff like that.
And the thing is too is, I mean, obviously as always, this stuff is subjective. There some of this stuff you might not, that we talk about, you might not consider to be arty, or you might especially some of the older ones you might not consider them to be arty, but this is kind of our personal categorization of this genre.
You've got I mean, there's some here I forgot to mention. Ugetsu, which is an amazing horror film from 1953. It's a film that is directed by Kenji Mizoguchi. Really good horror film. There's another one in there. Kuroneko is another Arthouse horror film. I feel like I'm literally just going to be reciting the entire Criterion Collection, because all these movies are in the Criterion Collection now that I look at it. And the next one here is Salo, or 120 Days of Sodom, which is one of the most notorious it's one of the most notorious like Arthouse horror films. Like it's one of the ones where like if you watch that movie, like you're a real cinephile. Yeah. It's a movie by Pier Paolo Pasolini, very controversial director. He was basically killed for the movies that he was making back in the day. Salo is known for being extremely graphic. And that's one of these things with these Arthouse horror films, is that they can be extremely graphic because they take lots of chances and they do things other films aren't doing, and they do them in a artistic way in which like they're not typically exploitative. They're more disturbing. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like slasher films, like somebody getting their throat cut or decapitated or something like that. Like that. That's almost exploitative entertainment where you're like, ooh, wow, look at that. Oh, I can't believe that. These films are more like, oh, wow, that's really messed up. Like I'm really disturbed by this scene that I'm watching. A lot of these films can have very disturbing material when it comes to just kind of human brutality, where it comes to like rape or murder. Yeah. Even like animal cruelties in some of these movies. I'm thinking of like Cannibal Holocaust is one of the most notorious films for animal cruelty, where they pretty much really killed animals in that movie. Yeah. It's pretty horrific.
Well, a lot of times in these, I mean, of course it can change, but a lot of times I feel like in these art house horrors, instead of showing you something awful that is actually happening in the real, they do it through psychological means. Yes. They're reliving something in their mind, and that's how the horror you get that dread feel for the film. The surrealistic feel, and how it's presented through their imagery.
They're often films that perhaps have different plot structures. They may be non-linear, or sometimes they have no plot structure at all. Like you're just watching like random shit happening, for the lack of a better term, and you have no idea like what's this plot, what's happening, what's going on, because you're so used to seeing like
a structure.
A structure like A goes to B goes to C, 3-act structure, rise and fall, climax and ending and all that kind of stuff. Some of these movies don't have those things. That's why when people go to see them, they're like, I don't understand it, therefore I think it's bad, which I think is kind of a narrow-minded way to look at some of these things. And you really kind of have to really open up your mind and be open to a lot of different things.
People would rather dismiss something nowadays than actually discuss it,
or actual think about it, or like extrapolate more from it than what's on the surface. Yeah. That's what a lot of these films do, is they're not surface level movies. Yeah. If anything, what's happening on the surface is often sometimes meaningless. Yeah. Like literally the actions of these characters is pointless, because it's not about that. It's about what their actions are saying versus what what's actually happening. For example, I guess we'll get into more modern stuff. Some modern stuff I think are are kind of catching people a little off guard, because I think they're trying to get bigger expositions in terms of like, where what people how many people can actually see it. You know what I mean?
I mean,
they're getting bigger distributions. That's what I'm saying.
I mean, like the Babadook.
Yeah, like the Babadook, or even like The Witch, something like that, or even like, for example, one of my favorites is Under the Skin.
Yeah.
Under the Skin is a movie that has absolutely no damn plot to it whatsoever, and it's absolutely brilliant. It's so psychologically immersive, and it's actually, if you break down that movie, it's about, I mean, this is kind of spoilerish territory here. It's an alien kind of discovering human, just humanity, and not understanding it at all, or trying to be human and not. It's
kind of like a little bit of it's a different version of The Man That Fell to Earth.
Yes. Yeah, The Man That Fell to Earth is
David Bowie.
Good. David Bowie,
where it's about an alien that comes to Earth and he's trying to. Huh?
Yeah. I'm trying to remember who directed. I think it was.
That's Nicholas Roeg.
Nicholas Roeg. Yeah. I almost said Eric Romer, and I'm like, that's not right. That's not right.
But yeah, it's an alien comes to Earth and he's trying to learn more about Earth, and then kind of gets wrapped up in it. And with Under the Skin, it kind of
it's similar to that, but there's like it's an alien who is taking the human form of Scarlett Johansson, and is basically like luring people to basically be
kind of abducting people,
people, but then executing them to for their meat processing. It has a plot to it, but you wouldn't have guessed what the plot is. And what's so crazy about that movie is I think it was shot over like several years. The guy who directed it is a very particular director.
Is it Jonathan Glazer?
Yeah. Jonathan Glazer, who directed such films as Birth with Nicole Kidman, Sexy Beast, which is one of my favorites, with Ben Kingsley as Don Logan, and I think Ray Winstone is in it. Ian McShane is in it for a very, very small role, but he directed that, and he's like kind of a perfectionist, so this movie took several years to make. And so Scarlett Johansson was probably in it before she had become a huge star that she is now, because this movie came out in 2013 for everybody keeping track at home. And so it's shot in like a documentary-esque style, and what we come to learn is that like some of the people that she like abducts didn't even know that it was a movie they were making. It was just like regular people on the street. Yeah. And it was just like, it's that level of like rawness. And a lot of these films can be very, very raw, or they can be very, very stylized to the point where like it's almost a fantasy. So the art house genre, I think, ranges significantly when it comes to how these films are made, or how these films are aesthetically perceived. I really like Under the Skin was just a crazy, crazy movie to me. And then you have movies like and then you got movies by other foreign filmmakers in the last like 20, 30 years, which are, I guess, not controversial. Controversial, let's throw it out there. Lars von Trier. Lars von Trier is I think, Danish film director? Danish? I can't remember if he's Danish or not. But it's one of those countries from Eastern Europe. Denmark. He's from Denmark, which I guess is Danish.
Yes, you're right.
And he's been doing movies for a while, but he's controversial just because his movies are very, what's what I'm looking for?
Explicit?
They're not even explicit. They're raw. They're out there. They're crazy movies. They're movies that that show very weird things, that show things that people don't tend to like. I mean, for example, Antichrist. The opening of Antichrist, and I'm going to warn you people here, shows a very explicit sexual scene of, like, full people having sex in a shower. Like, it's really explicit. And Antichrist is probably one of his most notorious movies because it is crazy. It's allegorical, it's trippy, it's surreal, it's about, like, man versus nature and just, like, crazy, crazy things. And the further the film goes on, the the crazier it gets. It gets more and more trippy, more and more involved. And he's a very controversial filmmaker for several reasons. I mean, his biggest thing is like when his film Melancholia premiered at Cannes Film Festival, like back in, I don't know, 2011, I guess. He famously said like he like empathized with like Nazis or something like that, or he felt like a Nazi or something stupid like that. It's actually something extremely tame compared to now when we literally have Nazis marching in the streets in some places. It's extremely tame, but he got like kicked out of Cannes for like life, or they brought him back anyways for the house that Jack built and stuff like that. He has an
interesting perspective. Very interesting mind. Yeah.
His films are very unique. I mean, he's part of that Dogma 95 group of filmmakers who like wanted to make movies that were like brought down to like their raw intentions. Like basically he wanted to bring it back to almost like they wanted to bring film back to like a Italian neo-realist level and stuff like that, which I think they kind of abandoned pretty quickly. But he did films like Breaking the Waves, also on the Criterion Collection, shocker there. He did Dogville. He did, like I said, Antichrist, Melancholia, Nymphomaniac, Volume 1 and 2, The House That Jack Built, which is his most recent film, which I just saw the other night. And that film is controversial, of course. Yeah. People walked out at Cannes because of that and things like that. But there are other, there's someone like Gaspar Noé who did films like Enter the Void. Yeah. And he did a film like Irreversible, where the entire movie is shown in reverse, I believe. And that film has one of the most like gruesome rape scenes in film that you'll ever see. Enter the Void, basically, like, I think somebody dies and his like consciousness is kind of like floating around. I haven't seen Enter the Void, and I haven't seen
Didn't he do Beyond the Rainbow too? Isn't that him too? Or is that
somebody?
That might be the guy that did Mandy.
He did. Oh, I think that's the guy who did Mandy.
Yeah.
Recently, he did Climax. He also did that movie Love, which a few years ago, which like literally had like really raw sexual stuff in it. I mean, if you look at the poster, it's pretty raw. It's like, I mean, it's pretty explicit. And with foreign film, sexuality and sexual stuff.
Yeah, we talked about that. Yeah,
way more. We've talked about it many times, but it's like it's way more open and way more shown than it is here in the United States. Violence is one of their bigger problems. Where was I? Oh yeah, I was talking about Enter the Void. Enter the Void, yeah. A French drug dealer living in Tokyo was betrayed by his best friend and killed in a drug deal. His soul, observing the repercussions of death, seeks resurrection. Yeah, so the whole film is like told in like a POV type angle where he's kind of like floating around and seeing different things. His soul, essentially. I haven't seen any of Gaspar Noé's films, surprisingly. That's kind of one of my biggest blind spots.
Yeah, I almost got a chance to see Climax.
What's interesting is that it's now available on streaming, I think on Amazon Prime. And Love, I was on Netflix for like the longest time. I think it still is. And people used to get, because there's two things on Netflix. There was a Love series, which starring like Gillian Jacobs was in it, who was from Community and stuff like that. And then there was Love by Gaspar Noé. Two completely different things. Completely different things. Some other kind of modern foreign art house films is one of my favorites that I saw in the recent years. That's Let the Right One In.
Yeah.
By Thomas Alfredson, who I think is a really underrated director.
He just that last movie he did was.
No, we're not talking about.
Oh, we're not going to talk about that. Okay.
Oh, The Snowman, which is apparently atrocious, which I haven't seen. But also, I think we talked about it before, where like apparently like they just ran out of time filming the movie. They didn't even get to film the whole script, and it's like, oh, okay,
that's nice.
Guess we're not gonna do that. But he did Let the Right One In. He did. I also think he did Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. Yeah. Yes, that was him. I think he's rather underrated. He's from Sweden, I believe.
Yes, he's Swedish.
Yes, he's from Stockholm, Sweden. But Let the Right One In was, I I guess not even famously, but it was remade a few years after it came out. I think it was remade.
It's called Let Me
2 years after it came out. Let Me In, which is directed by Matt Reeves, who went on to do 2 out of the 3 Planet of the Apes movies. He's doing the Batman film, which we referenced very briefly earlier on, so we're coming back to that.
He did also Cloverfield.
Did he do Cloverfield?
Yeah, he did Cloverfield.
Yeah, I think, yeah, he did Cloverfield. So yeah, those were some of them. We also didn't even bring up some of the other more obvious filmmakers. I mean, we touched on David Lynch. Everyone knows how much I love David Lynch. I think all of his films are basically art house horror films. Maybe it's not the straight story, but everything else. And Dune, a straight story, are not art house horror films, but Eraserhead, Blue Velvet, most definitely, Mulholland Drive, The Lost Highway, which is super underrated. His last directorial feature, which was Inland Empire, most definitely. Twin Peaks, Fire Walk with Me, most definitely. Yeah. That whole series is art house horror. If you've watched it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And even someone like David Cronenberg, who I know is one of Steven's favorites. Oh, yes. He's done art house horror as well. You could say most of his career is art house horror. I would say this: his career is pretty much all art house films.
I mean, especially I would say. I mean, look. I mean, a lot of his early stuff was body horror. You know, that very, very. You know, you could say even exploitative horror movies. Right. But as he got a little bit into his '90s work, he started to do a little bit more cerebral movies like Existence.
I would even say like Naked Lunch, which was 91, is most definitely art house horror. Crash, definitely art house horror. Existence, and I would even say, and then what are we looking at here? Some lists I saw. I think we talked about with Steven with it.
What about
The Fly is considered art house horror.
That's a little, but that maybe a little bit mainstream there.
Videodrome, most definitely.
What about The Ringer? Was it the
Dead Ringers? Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
With Jeremy Irons playing twins, twin gynecologists.
Yeah.
Yes, and most definitely. That movie's pretty dark. Jeremy Irons, underrated actor. People don't talk about him enough. He's one. Let's see. Let me go back because I'm all over the place when it comes to Google. Google is actually not even that big of a help. Google's not that big of a help this time around. Let me see.
I mean,
there's so many. I mean, we've talked. I mean, there's some. Okay, we'll get into even more stuff. How about things like Takashi Miike? I believe he did.
Audition.
Audition. Audition.
Old Boy. I mean, that's not Takashi Miike, but Old Boy came to my mind.
No, yeah, Park, right? Yeah, Chandler Park. Yeah. The thing with the difficult thing with looking up Takashi Miike is that he's directed 103 things.
Yeah. So you might as well not even go through all that.
He might. I mean, what could be here? He directed Audition, most definitely. Gozu, here's another one. Ichi the Killer, which I know Steven has seen. I have not seen
It's a weird
Ichi the
one.
Killer.
Yeah, that's definitely art house.
Yeah, 13 Assassins is not a horror movie, but it's amazing. So watch it because it's a pretty gruesome horror, pretty gruesome.
What about
samurai movie?
What about some of Darren Aronofsky's movies?
Oh yeah,
you could do Pi.
Requiem for a Dream is a horror movie to me.
I mean, Pi. Even you could even say
Mother.
Mother definitely.
Black Swan.
I was gonna say Black Swan is pretty kind of a horror movie.
Yeah, I mean a lot of his, the thing with him is like a lot of stuff he's kind of more mainstream, well known, similar to David Cronenberg. But his films I think are more appreciated by the art house crowd.
Yeah, I would say so.
Than I think they are mainstream. Like I told you. Yeah, last when I talked about Joker and I talked about the walkouts, I told you people walked out of Mother. Mother is a movie that definitely is not for the mainstream crowd. Although it had mainstream people in it, like Javier Bardem and Jennifer Lawrence, and it was probably at like a couple of thousand theaters. But The Fountain is not a horror movie, but it's definitely art house.
It's definitely art house.
Yeah, Pi, like you mentioned, yeah, most definitely. Let me go back to what I was looking at. An Iranian film that I really want to mention, A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night, is an amazing film.
Amazing vampire
that I highly recommend
movie.
to people. It's a vampire film. For me, when I first watched it, I was like, this is what a vampire film would look like if it was directed by Ingmar Bergman.
Yeah, it's black and white, you know.
Black and white, and it's existential. It's a fascinating film. It's really great. It's available on Blu-ray.
Kino.
It was available to stream for, I think it's Shout Factory.
No, it's a Kino release. I have it.
Is it?
Yeah.
I think, never mind.
It's a Kino release. I got it.
I wish I had it. Damn.
Shut up, Andrew.
Shut up, damn. I'm pretty sure many people are familiar with Guillermo del Toro, Kronos, Pan's Labyrinth. I would consider it Arthouse. Also, his film, it's also on the Criterion Collection. Shockingly, here is oh man, what's
the Devil's Backbone?
It's over in my collection. The Devil's Backbone. Yeah, it's over in my collection. That's why you're here, Steve.
I know a couple things.
Yeah, he knows a couple of things. Would you consider, this is something that's very interesting here, Donnie Darko? It's not a foreign film. It's directed by David Kelly. But do you consider that a horror film?
It's
sci-fi.
It's definitely psychological. It has a demon rabbit in it.
Yes, it does, Frank.
I mean, it's
Why are you wearing that?
I think because it is pretty mainstream now because it's kind of a cult hit. We might not think of it as art housey, but it kind of is.
Yeah. You also have Funny Games, which leads me into Michael Haneke.
Yeah.
Michael Haneke is a unique director. His films are very much art house films. They're not all horror related. They're more creepy. They're more disturbing on certain human levels. Like Funny Games is his most, like I say, horror centric movie, because it's literally people torturing like this family in like the country's in a country home or summer home or something like that. That was also remade into an English language remake
by him.
Funny Games by him, shot for shot remake. But he did what else? He did Amour, which is not a horror movie, but that's just kind of like that's his lightest film, but it's also really sad and melancholic. What's that movie I'm looking for that he did? Oh, The White Ribbon. The White Ribbon may not be a horror film, but it's dark. It's had dark tones in it.
He did The Piano Teacher, right?
Yeah, The Piano Teacher, which is more horrific when it's dealing with like psychological stuff. Yeah. These films are the thing with art house films is that like things in it may not be explicitly horrific.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's a lot of times it's more horrific on a human level than it is on a a fantasy level where there's like some
they might not they may not say like, oh, like that's not horror, and it's like yeah, it really is.
We're desensitized by things, especially when they're on the screen. You know, we have a hard time putting ourselves in people's places because we're just there to. A lot of people are just there to be entertained. They're not thinking about what if I was in that situation. You know, like
no, and a lot of these are thinking of like existential like horrors, like worrying about like. Am I going... For example, Eraserhead, which I mentioned earlier. Eraserhead may not be a horror film on the surface because it's so effing weird and nonsensical, but the whole movie is actually based on the fear of parenthood by David Lynch. Like his fear of becoming a father is like literally what that whole movie is about.
He's a filmmaker that's thought about a way to tell his story in a non-direct way. He's trying to make you think when he watches your movie, watches his movie,
And then you have, like, very, like, obvious art house horror films. Like, you have, like, this movie called House, which is literally bonkers crazy horror movie where, like, these kids go to, like, this house.
It's Scooby-Doo.
And things basically come alive. Like, piano, like, comes alive and like eats a kid, or like there's this crazy cat thing walking around and like plant stuff and like it's and like witch and all that kind of cool stuff. House is crazy movie.
Also in the Criterion Collection.
There's also a T-shirt too, which I really wish I had. It's a giant orange T-shirt with just like the cat in front of it. And then you have movies like Mandy.
Yeah.
Mandy with Nicolas Cage, which came out last year, and that movie is bonkers.
That's a crazy movie.
But it's obviously a horror movie because Nicolas Cage is getting revenge on like
it has one of my favorite scenes that I saw last year where he's fighting this weird creature in his living room and he he kills it, and then he like takes a big sniff of cocaine off of his like piece of glass, and then he goes to fight more. It's hilarious.
I thought you were gonna like mention the scene where he just walking around in his underwear screaming.
Well, that's great
that's
too.
Pretty good.
But yeah, the scene where he just sniffs a bunch of cocaine off of a piece of glass is it's amazing.
And then there's moments where like he's like killing like these weird Cenobite like demon creatures with like a chain with like a giant axe thing.
I need to watch that movie again. It's been a while.
Yeah, I immediately bought that movie. It's actually I think it's streaming on Hulu right now. Yeah. As of like this recording.
Yeah, I have it too. I got it right away too. Yeah.
And then you've got movies that start out one way and end up being completely something else.
Yeah.
And that's when we get into a movie that I think many people know about, and that's called Martyrs.
Yeah, yeah.
This also has an American remake, I think, which I never watched because it didn't need to be remade. And honestly, I don't think I could rewatch this movie. It's a movie that starts out as a revenge film and then turns into something completely different. And it's notorious for being extremely graphic.
Yeah.
And it kind of slips into a different form of horror where it's like the torture
it's
porn.
More it's more exploitative.
Yeah, there in the 2000s, I think when this film came out, 2008. The 2000s, I think we had this crop of torture porn films. Films that I guess are more like kind of like gross out films. Films I forgot what the horror subgenre was called. I think it was called like Squish or something like that. I don't know, something weird where like but you get like the Saw movies, the Hostel films, things like that, and that was part of it, where basically people kind of just wanted to see like gross stuff on screen, things like torture and stuff like that, which those movies were notorious for.
Well, typically back in the day, like when we had slasher movies, we would get that blood, but it would be there and it would be gone. In these movies, we would take our time, and you would like torture people, and you would stay with it, and it's just more about trying to gross you out.
Yeah, and it wasn't a squish horror. What was I think? It's splatter horror.
Squish horror sounds better.
Yeah, splatter horror, which was like deliberately focused on graphic portrayals of gore and graphic violence, human centipede, blood feast, maniac, hostile saw, stuff I just said. But man, if you want to see all of these subgenres, go onto Wikipedia and look up horror genre, and there's just tons of them, and a lot of them have like their own, and I would say the art house genre kind of falls into some of these. You know what I mean?
I think there's that type of that one's
because
a little
art house horror kind of like incorporates different things.
It does, but I think the more exploitative ones I don't feel as art housey to me.
For example, you know what's considered an art house horror film, but it's also considered a slasher film. It's a film we did a spotlight on, Peeping Tom.
Okay.
Yeah, Peeping Tom. And then you've got like. There's like
I find that one to be a little
horror.
bit straightforward to be art house, but
really okay. I think it's more art house because I just think like the way we broke it down. You know what I mean? The way we broke it down was pretty it's artistically done.
I think it's artistically done because it's made by an artistic director. But I mean,
that's also true.
But it's I don't know. I find that one to be a pretty easy watch.
Oh, this one here, and this one I don't think you can go against.
Okay.
I'm
listening.
These movies. Horror drama is a subgenre, right?
Yeah.
And in here they include The Babadook.
Yes, I agree. Yeah.
Let the Right One In, Antichrist, Audition, The Sixth Sense. Very interesting.
That's a little. I mean, it is.
That's
it
a little
is
more mainstreamy. Yeah.
But I don't know that I'd consider it art house. That definitely not art house.
Yeah, but those other ones most definitely.
Yeah.
And then for example, would you consider Evil Dead art house horror? Because, and I think this is the argument I'll make, extremely low budget, probably only shown in or appreciated by art house viewers, and just because of it's just because of the weirdness of it. You know what I mean?
Maybe. I mean, it's also a movie that you would have to think about it in the perspective of its time. Right. So for the time, it definitely did some weird things, maybe. I mean, Sam Raimi's kind of on that, like, he's always kind of been a guy that sticks in the indie realm. He's done a couple mainstream movies, but
Spider-Man.
Yeah, Spider-Man and the one Wizard of Oz movie. Oz Great.
Oz the Great and Powerful. Yeah. You know what's crazy? I was at a store the other day and I was like, I almost bought it.
Why would you do that?
Because I have a Sam Raimi section in my collection, and I need to.
He's just filling spots.
Just checking off boxes. My obsessive compulsive disorder just kicking in.
But I mean, it's there's a good debate for that one. Yeah,
I would say there is. I would also say.
The thing is somebody could come in here and argue all film is art. I mean, God, Scorsese wouldn't say Marvel is. There's no, but like all film has art in it, definitely. But we're looking at films that take horror in a direction that's a little bit more cerebral.
Very true. Yeah. Also, films. Let's see.
And present that cerebralness in a non-formulaic way.
I'll say this: there are two films by this specific director that I would consider art house films, and they are within the horror genre, but they're not. They're taking on certain like mainstream part of the horror genre, but taking them in an art house direction, and that is Jim Jarmusch's The Only Lovers Left Alive.
Yeah,
and then his most recent film, which I can't remember, even though I saw it in the theater and did a review on it. The Dead Don't Die, I believe is the title of the movie. Yeah, The Dead Don't Die. And Only Lovers Left Alive, it's a vampire movie, but it's not traditionally a vampire movie.
Yeah.
He's blending his art house sensibilities with the vampire genre. That movie stars Tilda Swinton, the late Anton Yelchin is in it, and then what's his name? Tom Hiddleston is in it, and it's kind of like a vampire rock star going through like an existential crisis or something like that. It's really, really fantastic. I highly recommend a lot of people seeing it. And The Dead Don't Die is basically kind of like it's a zombie movie, but like it's a zombie movie that's spoofing zombie movies, if that makes sense. It's kind of hating on zombie movies. It's like an anti-genre movie. It makes weird sense.
Well, something came to my mind when you were talking about Anton Yelchin. What about Jeremy Saulnier's films? Green Room, Blue Ruin.
Blue Ruin is a revenge film, but I don't know if it's a horror film per se.
I wouldn't say it's horror film per se, but I'd say Green Room is more.
Green Room is is in that range for me.
And then
just because you're dealing with like horrific elements in it,
Yeah.
No spoilers here, but they're like a young rock and roll group that's playing in a Nazi bar in like the deep South, and the song they sing is like isn't like Nazi punks. It's a cover of like Nazi punks, but it's an anti-Nazi song. And anywho, they end up getting like trapped there, and they gotta like fight their way out. It's pretty gruesome.
And then also his newest film, Hold the Dark, has got some
I've not seen it.
You didn't see it? It was on Netflix, a Netflix film.
Oh my goodness, I did. Yeah,
the one where he's the hunter. The hunter goes.
Yes.
It's got Jeffrey Wright.
Jeffrey Wright's in it.
Alexander
Skarsgård's in it. It's really good. I did see that. Yes, I almost completely forgot about it. Another film that I haven't mentioned yet is the movie that I love. I think it was in my top 10 of 2017, and that is Raw.
Yeah.
Raw is an awesome French film, psychological film. It's a cannibalistic film, so there's going to be some parts in it that may gross you out, but it's taking this idea of kind of like coming of age and correlating it with like this hunger for human flesh, and like this hunger for human flesh also unleashes a sexual hunger as well, and it's a very an allegory for young person becoming sexually exploratory or arriving and whatnot. It's fantastic. I think it's a great
that
film.
Movie makes me think of the one movie Teeth, which could be
man, that's an art house horror movie. That is. I've seen it. What's the condition called?
The condition's called
it's called like I don't want to say this, but vaginal dentata, I believe is the condition.
Yeah, that's it. Vaginal dentata.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, that's it.
Oh man. Wow, I can't believe I pulled that one out. I've only seen the movie once. Yeah, it's a very anti-sex movie. I'll tell you that. That and Requiem for a Dream, which is like the best anti-drug movie. Anti-sex movie is one. If you want to get art house horror, is that movie, and then It Follows.
Yeah, definitely.
It Follows is kind of a more modern film. When did that movie come out? Like
it's been about 5 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Time is relative. It just keeps moving. And It Follows, basically, the plot of that movie is that, like, is you basically pass on this creature or this thing that hunts you until, like, kills you through sex. So, like, if you have sex with someone, they pass this curse on, essentially. And the movie's basically about these kids, like, trying to not die. You know what I mean? Trying to not trying to outrun death, if you will. Very, kind of thematic in that regard. I dug it. It came out 2014, so Stephen was right, 5 years ago. I saw it in the theater. I think I own it. I dig it.
Yeah, I like it too. The way it's filmed Mitchell is very. I think it recalls like original Halloween. Has that kind of feel where there's a lot of like long zooms.
Yeah. And there's a lot of moments where like us as viewers in the background can see the thing coming, and the people have no idea. And I kind of like those things. It's a very overused trope.
It's something that a lot of modern horror. I mean, even another couple films from a director we haven't talked about yet. Our guy that did Hereditary, and
Ari Aster.
Yeah, Ari Aster. Him that and the most recent Midsommar.
Midsommar to me is a horror movie. Yeah, it's dealing with it. Midsommar is kind of a modern take on The Wicker Man, but set in Sweden, and it's more about like toxic relationships and cult shit. I mean, it's a crazy movie. It just came out on Blu-ray like a week ago. So if anybody's interested, it's available.
It's good.
I saw it in theater with people, and it got a little weird.
It's weird.
Got a little weird. I'm not gonna lie. Watching art house horror movies in theaters with people are very uncomfortable.
It's uncomfortable, and it's funny to watch people walk out.
Yeah, or it's like the way people react. Like some people just start busting out laughing because things get so weird. That's their only form of reaction. Another film that talk about revenge a little bit is a movie called Revenge, which came out in last year. That movie is also kind of underrated. It's a graphic film. I can't remember what country of origin that was from. Of course, you type in revenge and you get a bunch of different things. I have no idea. I have no idea where. I think it was
an Australian.
French.
Oh, French.
French, because it says country, France, Belgium. Oh, I guess it's
Belgium. Oh.
Usually, sometimes it's language, French and English, yeah. But it's another film where, and this happens a lot in just the horror genre in general, and it's something that I think is becoming really old and lazy, is when women get revenge in a lot of these movies, it's due to rape, basically. Yeah. And it's a trope that just keeps getting used
like I Spit on Your Grave.
Over and over again. Yeah, like I Spit on Your Grave. I mean, even The Last House on the Left was something like that. Virgin Spring, which I mentioned earlier. There's tons of these movies. There aren't even art house horror movies. They're dramas. They're other forms of movies. But it's just overused trope. I mean,
Catwoman. That kind of has a little bit of that. I mean, not necessarily rape, but mistreated woman.
We're talking about Tim Burton?
I mean, just like in her story that she's a mistreated female that...
Are you talking about the Halle Berry movie?
I thought that was just her origins in general.
Oh, I mean, she's had a bunch of different origins. Her origin in some things is she's a cat burglar.
Okay.
In Frank Miller's Year One, I think she's like... a prostitute of some kind or something like that.
I got you.
Please don't misquote me, but it's something like that.
I'm not the comic book
she's
guy.
A cat burglar. So. But I would say in Tim Burton's Batman, she's a mistreated, secretary or assistant by Max Schreck, who is Christopher Walken, who coincidentally was in Cronenberg's The Dead Zone, which is kind of like more our house kind of horror. But granted, it's based off of a well-known novel. But Max Schreck was the name of I think was the name of in Nosferatu. I'm pretty sure Max Schreck was no,
the
it was
actor's
Count
name.
Orlok.
It was the actor's name.
Yeah, Max Schreck was the actor's name of Count Orlok in
Yeah.
Murnau's Nosferatu. That's what the connection is. Yeah, that's the connection. That's all this art house horror connection. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going like back in the day with Suspiria, which I mentioned, Tenebrae, The Beyond, another movie called The Addiction, which came out in '95, which I actually really want to see. You also have this movie called Tetsuo the Iron Man. Came out in 1989. This is a movie I hear is pretty crazy. I haven't seen it yet. And it's directed by, I can't even pronounce that. Oh, here we go, Steven. Shinya Tsukamoto.
That sounds pretty good.
Or Tsukamoto. Yeah, I think that's Tetsuo the Iron Man. I've heard about that movie for years. You have, let's see.
More modernly, we could talk about Yorgos Lanthimos a little bit.
Yeah, Yorgos Lanthimos.
You could say Dogtooth.
Dogtooth.
Yeah.
Dogtooth, Killing of a Sacred Deer. You want to hear something crazy? I think I brought this up before. Apparently, those movies are considered dark comedies.
I could see how there is definitely some like weird comedy in the movies, but I mean, I don't think they get enough credit for their darkness, though. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean, especially Secret.
Dogtooth is really fucking dark.
It's really dark.
Excuse my language. Yeah, like, it's really, really dark. Like, basically, the premise of Dogtooth, if I remember correctly, I've only seen the movie once. It was actually on, it was on Netflix for years. I don't know if it's still on there. I doubt it.
It also has a Kino release.
It does? Yeah, it does. Yeah. Dogtooth came out in 2009. Basically, 3 teenagers live isolated without leaving their house because their overprotective parents say they can only leave when their dog tooth falls out. It's a film about many different things, but it's dark in the sense like it's commenting on kind of overprotectiveness and kind of super conservativeness that we see within our society, where like, you know, kids like you know, like in this movie, like these kids can't even leave the house. Yeah. They can't leave like this home that they live in because the parents are so afraid of like outside influence corrupting them and things like that. And it shows the dangers of that over time can just like blow up. You know what I mean? Yeah. And yeah, Dogtooth for me, I thought wasn't funny. I wasn't laughing in this movie.
I was more like just like with my mouth open, just kind of like wondering what the hell's going on.
It leads to a lot of like dangerous things because those types of things that type of oppression and that type of like lack of freedom can lead to dangerous and, you know, compromising things, and we see it throughout our society all the time. But yeah, so Dogtooth is great. The Killing of a Sacred Deer and The Lobster is not quite a horror
it's more
movie.
That is more comedy, I think.
I think the premise of that movie, where basically like when your spouse dies, you go to this place and you choose what animal you want to be reincarnated with if you can't find another mate. Basically, yeah. That's the premise of that movie. And I think and Colin Farrell's character decides he wants to become a lobster or something like that. And his brother's a dog.
Yeah.
Rachel Weisz is in that movie. Colin Farrell's in that movie. I think John C. Reilly's in it too. It's good, but yeah, Yorgos Lanthimos has some of the oddest films that you'll ever see. What's interesting, his most recent film, The Favorite, is probably his most accessible movie.
Yeah.
And his easiest film to kind of grapple with. And even then, it's kind of it's an art house film.
Yeah. What do you think about Jordan Peele's Us? I know it's mainstream. I know a lot of people saw it.
Yeah, I was actually thinking of both Us and Get Out.
Because Get Out, to me, I don't know that I would consider that art housey, but I think Us has a little bit of an art house feel.
I think I honestly would put them both in that art house feel.
Okay.
The reason and the argument I make for Get Out is just the audience reaction to it when people were going to it expecting it to be a traditional horror movie, and what they ended up getting was essentially an episode of The Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
An allegorical episode of The Twilight Zone about racism and the way the white community treats black community and the views and all that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? What's it called? Race relations. That's the term I'm looking for. Race relations and things like that. What's interesting is that movie wasn't it put in the comedy section for the Golden Globes? And Jordan Peele was like, tell me about that movie that you find funny about that movie. I'll say this, though. That movie has a lot of darkly comedic moments in the way in which it so blatantly treats race relations. Yeah. Like, there's that whole scene within it where basically the character's being shown off to all of these older, like, these old upper class or rich white suitors or whatever, and they're just asking him like all these odd questions, like how much do you bench press, or how well do you golf, and all these ridiculous like things, and they're just viewing him as like a commodity or something like that. I don't want to give anything away, and those scenes are like awkwardly funny. But that film is I think at Arthouse because it's non-traditional horror,
sure,
and it's allegorical and things like that, and it's really fascinating to me. Us is even more non-traditional horror, in my opinion, although it has more traditional horror things in it. But the story in it is so interesting, unique, and allegorical, and what he's trying to say about relationships between light and dark, good and bad, all of those things, and just the way people relate to one another. And maybe we aren't as far away from our dark sides as we think we are. I find that to be endlessly fascinating.
What do you think about something like American Psycho? Where does that lie, you think?
Oh, I think that's art house horror.
Yeah,
I think it is because one, it's comedy horror to me.
Yeah, it's definitely comedy.
The stuff in it is
it's
so
definitely
absurd.
Satirical.
It's satirical about like 1980s. It's satirical about like hyper masculinity and like toxic masculinity, which I don't think is a term people even used when that movie came out. That's more of a modern term. But just the character of Patrick Bateman is just so narcissistic that you can't help but laughing at his narcissism and his psychosis. It's a movie that is just, I've watched it so many times because I think it's so unique. Directed by a woman. People don't seem to realize. Mary Harron. Not Mary Harron. Maybe it was Mary Harron. American Psycho. It's also based on a book that apparently it's much different than I think the movie for the most part. Apparently the book is more gruesome, which is kind of makes sense to me. You can do more, I guess, in a book than you can on screen. Christian Bale, Mary Harron. I was right. I should trust my instincts more. Damn it, Steven. Why didn't you tell me
I wanted you to figure out your success there.
Yeah, I'll say this. I think it's art house horror. For me, I think it's become more mainstream in the years since then.
I think it's because Christian Bale became Batman.
Yeah, because he became huge. That kind of helps. It also has like, who else is in the movie? Jared Leto's in the movie. Justin Theroux's in the movie. Chloe Sevigny, Reese Witherspoon. But it's a satirical movie about masculinity. It's also a satirical movie about like the 80s as well. Yeah. Hip to be square and Huey Lewis in the News and all that kind of stuff. I actually wrote like a whole paper on that way back when I was taking courses and whatnot. Another movie that I wanted to talk about, there's actually a lot of movies, but we don't have too much time. What are some?
Well, I was going to say,
bring this one up. I want to bring this one. I'll pose this question to you.
Okay.
We talked about it beforehand. Annihilation. Alex Garland's film.
I mean, you could even say Ex Machina, yeah.
Ex Machina is definitely a horror in my opinion.
Definitely the scenario it presents, and the result it presents is horrific, and that's the thing, I mean, like, it might not on paper sound like a horror movie, but ultimately what the movie projects is very horrific, and I would definitely say Ex Machina is pretty close there. I would say it's on the borderline. And Annihilation, I think, visually has a lot more horrific things in it. They're definitely very borderline art house sci-fi horror. Yeah, I mean, it's I would say yes. I would say yes.
Yeah. Let's see.
Another director I was going to bring up to you was Nicholas Winding Refn.
Thank you. Because I forgot to mention.
Yeah, Neon Demon is a good one.
Yeah, Neon Demon I think is definitely his art house horror film. I'm a big Nicholas Winding Refn fan. I don't even know if big is the right term. I like his work. His work is very stylized, very unique. Drive seems to me his most popular film because I think Drive is his most linear and accessible film. The one he did after that threw people
Only God
completely
Forgives
overboard. Only God Forgives, which is an insane film. That's an art house film. Whether it's a horror art house film, I think is perhaps up for debate. I mean, I couldn't even tell you what that film is actually about. It's about so many different things. But Neon Demon most definitely.
Yeah.
I think Neon Demon has a lot of horror elements in it. I really like his style. And he's not a kind of foreign filmmaker who's not afraid to go there. Just because he just, one of those foreign sensibilities and whatnot. There's a lot of other ones I wanted to talk about. We talked about Mandy. Hereditary, we talked a little bit about Ari Aster. Hereditary and Midsommar are very similar to one another. How about... no, that's not really art house. It's a movie that I thought was going to be a big art house hit, and I saw it in the theater, and I saw it like late at night, and it comes at night. Yeah, I know this is a film that you didn't.
I didn't love it.
Yeah,
I didn't love it, but it's not terrible. I just found that by the end of the movie, it didn't really give me what I wanted. I mean, I know the movie has. It's been a while since I've seen it, but I know its messages within the movie, and that it's not necessarily about the end result because it's more about the message of these people living together in isolation.
right.
But it's definitely art house, definitely.
Now, I definitely want to mention this one. I think because I touched upon it earlier, The Witch, but I didn't really talk about it. And the reason why I want to bring up The Witch is because one of us has seen Robert Eggers' follow-up to this film, The Lighthouse. Yeah. Steven, is that an art house horror film?
Most definitely. It's definitely mythological. There's a lot of mythology going on, and dude, this dude is in love with
black and white.
German expressionism, like
weird accents.
Yeah, he's definitely in love with it. See, what I love about that is I think that not only, especially with The Lighthouse, he shoots it in a, I don't know what you're more in tune with the aspect ratio stuff.
Right.
But this basically,
I know it's very narrow.
It's basically a box. It's basically a square, and that makes you focus on the screen a lot more. Also, I think because his films, the language in his films are, though in English, are in very thick accents.
Right.
It makes you have to listen more. And I think that's interesting. I think that's a way to make people pay attention to your film more. But it's an amazingly weird movie. Some people are not loving it. Our friend Dan didn't really love it. But it's
I'm gonna love it.
Yeah, I think you're gonna love it. It's
I didn't say this beforehand. I probably should have. I love these types of movies. To me, my favorite types of movies are like dark, cerebral, surreal, non-linear, crazy, wacky.
The more I have to think about the movie,
they're my favorites.
The more I have to think about what the hell was going on, try to figure out that it's like figuring out a puzzle. If you like puzzles, right. Sometimes I like a movie. I do like movies that don't make me think too. Sure, I like to have it easy sometimes, but a lot of times I always want to have a puzzle. Sometimes I want to be able to watch a movie and be like, wow, that was trying to say something. Sometimes I get it right off the bat, and sometimes I have to go back and I have to watch it again.
Right, yeah.
And that's what filmmakers want you to do, is you want you to watch your movie multiple times.
The best filmmakers, I think, for me, are the less obvious ones. They're the ones that are trying to make their films really complex and really kind of using the medium for more than just entertainment.
Yeah.
They're using the medium for artistic expression and things like that. Just following up what you were saying about the aspect ratio. The aspect ratio of The Lighthouse is 1:19 to 1 aspect ratio. So we're talking very, very thin aspect ratio.
Yeah.
It's basically like a rectangle.
Well, I mean, it's like the whole movie's
like a box or a rectangle.
The whole movie's like a painting. It's like a frame on the wall. and it's a beautiful. It's old school. I'm sure he shot on film.
Let me see.
It wouldn't.
It's because it says it.
It
right
would
here.
surprise me if he didn't.
I have no idea what this is. It just says Panavision, Panaflex, Millennium XL2. It doesn't really tell me.
But it's
35 millimeter. It says 35 millimeter negative. So I'm assuming that's definitely.
It's a beautiful.
That's not digital.
It's a dark movie. It's definitely it has a noir aspect to it in a lot of scenes. It's definitely has a Lynchian vibe to it.
Good.
So you'll love it.
Yeah. So Lighthouse. Yeah, I can't wait to see that.
It also is pretty funny too.
Oh, good.
It's also got some darkly funny stuff in there. Yeah.
Because I think I've mentioned this movie before. The oddest aspect ratio I've ever seen in a movie is 1-to-1, which was Xavier Dolan's mommy is a 1-to-1 aspect ratio, and that looks like it's really close to what this is, and it's really just fascinating to me. Another types of movies that I mean, what is interesting is there's Jennifer Kent, who directed Babadook, also did this movie called Nightingale, which came out this year. Yeah. And it got a very, very limited release, and I didn't get to see it, and I don't even know when it's going to be available to watch in any other format. But I know that's kind of like a revenge type movie, kind of. It's a horror movie because I think it deals with once again rape and the graphicness of it. There's another director, Ty West, who did a movie called The House of the Devil, which is kind of another art house horror film. I think he also did. No, he didn't do.
I've heard
the
name.
Innkeepers. Yeah, Ty West. He did The Innkeepers. That's another kind of modern, like a smaller art house horror film. He did one of those segments for VHS. He did a Cabin Fever too. These aren't like great, but there was another one I was just looking at. Adam Wingard did a movie called You're Next, which I think is kind of underrated.
He's kind of gone more mainstream, though.
He's kind of gone more mainstream now. But what do you think about Mike Flanagan, who kind of started out in that kind of indie art house horror range? He started out specifically. I saw his movie the other day called Absentia. I had never seen this movie before. And Absentia. It's available to watch. Where did I watch it? Was it Amazon Prime or something like that? But it's a very, very art house film, very low budget, and it's one of his earliest films. Right after that, he did Oculus, and then he did Hush, and then like his filmography's only grown since.
Yeah,
then.
he's doing Dr. Sleep. Yeah, he's gonna say I'm seeing Dr. Sleep tomorrow night.
Oh
yeah.
You're going to one of those October 30th screenings?
Yes.
Yeah, the Fandango screenings.
Yeah.
I got to see if that's playing anywhere around here. I doubt it because nothing around here is cool. Unfortunately.
Well, he's definitely got more mainstream. He's
definitely got more.
He's gotten hooked up with Stephen King stuff.
Another one is Craig Zoller, Bone Tomahawk.
I was gonna bring him up.
Film.
Yeah. Bone Tomahawk has got horror elements, definitely.
Yo, yeah. You seen that third act? Yeah, it did.
but they're also, I would say, I mean, though it's on the borderline, it's a little bit more exploitative than anything.
Yeah, very
His
true,
movies are all exploitation movies.
I mean, and he also did what's that?
The Brawl in Cell Block
99.
99, yeah.
Which I think is not really a whole. I mean, those prisons that what's his name was rolling through were pretty horrific to me. Yeah, Anna Lilia Mirapur is the one who did The Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. Yeah. I'm looking at a list of just like kind of art house directors changing the game. That's this article I'm looking at on the playlist. It's 12 art house directors who have changed the horror game. I
think we've named quite a few.
Yeah, there's a few of them here that we've already gotten into. Oh, I mean, this is an art house horror film I saw the other day, and I want to bring it up because I wasn't expecting to be as good as it is, and that is American Mary.
Okay.
It's I think I saw it on Amazon Prime. American Mary is a really interesting, dark, underrated art house horror film. It stars Catherine Isabel, who horror fans will know who she is. She was in Ginger Snaps. She was one of the sisters in Ginger Snaps. Okay. And yeah, it's a really cool film. Basically, she's a medical student, and she starts doing underground surgeries in order to make lots of money, and she ends up kind of being consumed by that world, and she starts using her her education in the human anatomy to torture people and stuff like that. It's pretty bloody and pretty gruesome body horror type stuff. You know what I mean, when it comes to human anatomy and things like that. But I also want to mention Ginger Snaps because it's not quite an art house horror film, but it is for me because it's kind of more of a cult film. But for me, because it's low budget, it was under the radar when it came out around 2000, and it came out in 2000, and it's a film that's a werewolf film, but it's also combining sexual coming of age for young women, as well as werewolfism, and it's really, really fascinating for a film that has such a low budget and was really unable to utilize really great special effects for the wolves. It really made the most of it when it came to its themes versus when it came to its exposition of just being oh, here's a wolf just walking around eating people. Yeah. You know what I mean? It kind of hides those things because it doesn't have the budget to show those things. I thought it was really ingenious when it came to that. Yeah, we've gone through lots and lots of movies. What are we looking at in terms of time here?
I think we're about closed up here. It's an hour 20 minutes. Yeah, we're about an hour 20 minutes. We talked. We cover a lot of ground.
It's literally endless when it comes to.
And it's literally obviously subjective. So we could have said things that you might not agree with.
For some reason, I feel like I'm forgetting some big modern ones, and I hate myself for it. And let's see. I
don't think so.
I mean, there's some other movies. There's what's his name? Ben Wheatley, who's kind of an English film director. He did a movie called A Field in England. It's kind of a horror movie. Oh, one thing I forgot to bring up: Carnival of Souls.
Okay.
Man, Carnival of Souls is a Criterion movie. Crazy movie. It's great. The Innocents. From 1961, the Jack Clayton film. It's another Criterion film.
Yeah, that one's pretty arty.
It deals with ghosts and kind of things like that. Even something I don't even know if it's a horror movie. It's just a weird, surreal movie. Last Year at Marienbad. When you're dealing with Don't Look Now. Don't Look Now, I would consider an art house horror movie. And that's the movie. That's another Nicholas Roeg film. This movie stars, what's in it? Donald Sutherland's in it. Julie Christie, I believe, is in it. Eyes Without a Face we talked about. Oh, I didn't bring this guy up because he's a piece of crap human being and everybody hates him. Roman Polanski pretty much got his career started his career doing art house horror movies with Repulsion, Rosemary's Baby, movies like that. Even Knife in the Water is kind of an art house horror movie, which is one of his early films. But, he's a piece of garbage human being, so we don't really like to bring him up. But those movies I think are kind of important to know. Let's see. Oh, another... we talked about Mario Bava. This is a film that keeps coming up. And I don't know if it's art house horror, and I don't think it is, because Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho is not an art house horror movie. It is for the way it's made and for its thematic depth and all that kind of stuff. But Alfred Hitchcock was a major film guy back in the day.
He was this
his movies were.
He was the Christopher Nolan of his time.
People think he's because people study him in film schools and all that kind of stuff and courses and stuff like that, thinking he's some underground, like somebody that nobody knows about. No, Alfred Hitchcock made mainstream movies that like large groups of people went to see back in the day. He was one of those first kind of big mainstream guys who was making commercial movies, and he knew he was making commercial movies for like the masses. The Shining is another one that I talked about with Steven before. I see coming up on these lists. To me, The Shining is pretty mainstream. Granted, when it came out, people didn't like it because of how artsy it is. You know, back in the day, I think it was nominated for like several Razzies, including Stanley Kubrick for Worst Director. Yeah. And now it's considered a horror masterpiece. Quiet we've talked about, and I think I think we're pretty much
pretty covered.
I mean, there's so much more.
It's all like I said earlier, subjective, and it could all be. There's stuff that you might consider arty, and stuff that we might have said that you don't consider art house. But I mean, film is to me, if the movie's got something it's trying to project, it's got some kind of art there. I think.
Right. Yeah, if Steven doesn't stop me from talking, I'm never going to stop
He's never
going to
keep trying to trail off and find some more.
I never want to stop talking about movies.
Yeah, we never do, but we for the viewers' sake.
Yeah, he's got to wrangle me in. He just got to wrangle me in.
Viewers' sake, we got to cut it here. We usually stay about an hour and a half, so. But that'll be it for this episode of the Cinema Discovery Project. I'm Stephen Billings. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Cinema Discovery Project. I throw all my goodies on there that I buy. Where can we find you, Andrew?
You can find me on Twitter at Cabzilla06, as well as my YouTube channel, Cabzilla Productions.
And you can find the audio for this podcast on Podbean or Apple Podcasts, and that will be it for this episode. Thank you for listening. Please put in all your comments down. Please give us a rating on iTunes. That would be great. I'd like to see more ratings on there. If you have any comments you want to throw in there, throw it in there, and we'll see if we can get to it on the next show. Thanks for listening, and hey, keep on watching them movies.
I know I will.